Welcome to the Her Voice Shines podcast, where we celebrate the power, brilliance, and resilience of women everywhere. I'm your host, Heidi Warrington. Join us as we share inspiring stories and insights from extraordinary women who have found their voice and are making a difference. Together, we'll create a ripple effect, illuminating the path to visibility and empowerment. Let's break barriers, shatter ceilings, and lift each other up. In each episode, we dive deep into the journeys of women who have turned their challenges into triumphs and their dreams into reality. Whether you're looking for motivation, guidance, or a community that understands your journey, you're in the right place. Stay tuned and remember, let your voice shine. Well, you already know what time it is. It's the Her Voice Shines podcast with Heidi Warrington. I am your beautiful host based in the beautiful city of Houston, Texas. I don't know when you'll see this, but today is my Friday, so I'm super excited. I'm excited about the next guest. I always find my guests, I go look at what they have going on and look at their forms. So I'm excited. I know we have a lot to talk about, but you guys know the drill. We don't waste a lot of time. Our guest comes to the stage, tells us their name, where they're streaming from, and we get the magic of their story. Without any further waiting time, here's my very beautiful guest for today.
Hi, Chandra. Thank you so much for having me on today. It's a pleasure and an honor. So I'd like to thank you and acknowledge you for putting a powerful podcast for women together. So thank you. And my name is Heidi Warrington. I'm streaming from Detroit, Michigan, where I've been born and raised.
I love it. We got Detroit, Michigan in the building. How's your weather, Heidi? In Houston, it's probably about 80 degrees today. Are you guys, how are you feeling on today?
Well, it's sunny. It's about 55 degrees. And for a Michigander, that is a heat wave. So I'll take it.
55, I need boots and a fur coat on almost. Okay, I'm Houston, thick-blooded. That's how we roll. But thanks for sharing that. But we have to hear from this wonderful lady. Let us know what you do, Heidi. How did you get there? And really what you want us to know about the mission that you're seeking to put into the earth.
All right, great. So I'll start off with I'm a registered nurse, and I've been in healthcare for almost 20 years. I started off very humble, meager beginnings. So part of my story is I was a teenage mother, and I was married very young, and I needed to create a sustainable career for myself and my children at a very young age. So I enrolled in my local community college and felt that registered nursing was a reliable, dependable career for myself. And I took that on and started off at the local community college and wanted to further. I absolutely loved nursing. It was promising. And I love taking care of others. And then I transitioned on to work on my bachelor's degree remotely from home while raising children. And I did the same thing with my master's degree, finally finishing just 2 years ago with a nurse executive degree, while working full-time and practically going to school close to full-time a majority of my career. And I continue to rise despite those challenges. So in the 20 years that I've been in healthcare, about 15 of those I've spent in nursing leadership. And I rose to become a chief nursing officer. And the last place that I was a chief nursing officer was a crisis system of care. And crisis meaning behavioral health crisis, like freestanding psychiatric emergency departments. And I really felt that my work was so meaningful, mission driven. And I knew that this is the area that I wanted to continue to shine in and grow as a professional. So, which those women in business that know once you become a chief, you're in the C-suite, what do you do next? You become another chief nursing officer, or do you go on and start a business? So when I realized after a year or two in the crisis system that I was one of the very few nurse executives inside of that niche or subspecialty of healthcare, I wanted to go and share all that I had learned and possibly help the systems across the United States with the unique advantage that I had had from spending about 15 years in the hospital setting and transitioning to the community setting, and to share what I had to offer as far as experience, expertise, and really how to get your the most bang for your buck as far as your nurse staffing, budgets, finance, top of licensed care, And so about 2 years ago, I launched Warrington Solutions, which is my consulting firm, and have now obtained contracts with state governments. And I speak on national podiums all throughout the country on exactly that, crisis stabilization nursing, and how to best utilize and to manage a crisis stabilization nurse. Not really manage a crisis stabilization nurse, but how to really harness and leverage the capabilities that nurses provide within the system. So what I realized is that the nurses were underutilized in some capacities within these crisis systems. So then I travel around the country sharing on how to best utilize that nurse and empower all of those strong male and female leaders in the nursing profession in this niche area. And I've really had a great response. I've been on just about every national podium that is pertinent to the profession, and I've gotten a lot of accolades and invitations to speak further. And my next adventure is to be attending the International Council of Nursing in Helsinki, Finland, and that takes place in June, where I was acknowledged for this emerging practice with crisis stabilization nursing. And I think I'm one of the first to recognize that this is an emerging practice, that it needs its own scope and standards of practice. And I was very grateful and honored that the International Council of Nursing, which is the leading organization in the world, has accepted my abstract and is willing to listen to what I have to say about this particular specialty. So in a nutshell, I had very, meager beginnings as a teenage mother, worked and went to school the entire time while I built my career, identified a subspecialty of nursing that I happen to be one of the few nursing leaders in the field. And I have grown on to present this topic on national stage and going international in June of this year. So it's been a wild ride, and I have 2 beautiful children. Olivia, she's 23, and I have a son named Ray, named 20, and I'm honored that they're both going into healthcare. My daughter's becoming a physical therapist, and she's getting her doctorate in physical therapy, and my son is going into the paramedic and firefighting field. So we have a household of healthcare providers, so I can't say that I didn't rub off on them a little bit. I'm very proud of them both, and so the 3 of us together are tackling this healthcare world and making an impact overall. And all 3 of us just want to help people, and they've watched me grow throughout the years. And I am inspired daily by their passion and by their willingness to help others. And I can't say that doesn't feed my ambition to continue to be strong and shine for them and show them what's possible.
Oh my gosh, I love it, Heidi. And when I was reading the information, I'm so happy that you brought it so clear, because I was like, I'm like, I've interviewed a lot of women now, but I had really never come across the crisis stabilization. So for me, it was just like one of those things where my antennas peaked. So, I mean, it seems like a fast moving dynamic field. Also, too, seems a lot of layers to it. So let me first start before we get into the meat of this. What are you doing to stay grounded for crisis stabilization nurses? Because when you're dealing with, behavioral aspects and lots of moving parts, also to being a pioneer, also to aggregating information, Heidi has to stay fueled for the ride. What do you do to keep you connected with this work and move with it with such grace as you appear to do?
The key for myself is building my base to foster resilience. So the number one pillar that I focus on is my family and making sure that my kids are supported and that we've got a lot of family love, and putting time and investment in that has been very important to me. It is not simple. It's not easy. We're working moms, and we've got to, figure out what's for dinner, and we've got meetings to go to, and we've got agendas to put together, and to balance that, it's not easy. And I can't say that my kids didn't grow up coming to work with me and sitting in my office while I went to another meeting, or sitting in the back table while I'm, at a board meeting. And it wasn't a bad environment by any means, but they watched me grow with that. So continuing to foster family and your support system. So then when you do need someone and when you do need a little strength and days are tough, you've got that backbone behind you and that support system. So that's key. And then also I've really invested into yoga and meditation for really the entire time, like the last 20 years, 25 years, I've done that. And I know that I can go into my safe space and go to an area where I can feel completely, disconnected from, the busy world, and just go into a meditative mode for an hour, a couple times a week. And that's very valuable. And I feel strongly about those practices. And really, I'll pull myself away from social media, not watching a lot of television, and I listen to a lot of music. And if you find me on a particularly great day or not so great day, what I can do is just turn up that radio and dance around my kitchen. And that seems to do the trick from time to time.
Oh, I love it. And, I was just talking to another guest, and I was just saying, like, their meditation, because I had kind of gotten away from it in 2024, just because life, and we were moving around, and you mentioned physical therapy. My grandfather had a stroke, and we had a lot of physical therapy. We had occupational therapy. We had speech therapy, running a business and running a mom. Running a household as a mom. I didn't have a lot of, I couldn't find that quiet hour sometimes. And when I got back to it in 2025, this year, I was like, you know what? No, there's something definitely different. We knew you were in survival mode and you were trying to get everything together, but you have to find that hour of meditation. And that started in 2025, coupled with the fact, because I'm a reader, I wasn't being able to read as much. It was just a bunch of different things. But I found that getting the reading in and that meditation in the morning, particularly when I first get up and just sitting in silence for 30 minutes, it just makes the biggest difference to my day. And I tell people, because people see me doing like so many different things. And I'm like, I was doing them in 2024, but I was like running raggedy too. So I had to really figure out what those things were so that I can continue going and doing it at a high level of excellence, because that's what I desire to put in the earth. So I'm so happy that you talked about the yoga and meditation, because I want women of all professions to see that this is what we do to keep this train moving, to show worthy, I guess, and do our thing like we like to do it. I want to go here, Heidi, because something peaked in the very first segment. You spoke about underutilization. You said that some nurses are underutilized. When we hear that term, I come from corporate. I left corporate in 2021. So sometimes underutilized is like, it's like a walk, with corporate leadership and things of that sort. Do you find when you say underutilized that that's a difficult conversation to have, or how are you navigating that? Because sometimes when people hear underutilized, people are like, well, do we let go of people? What are we doing? And how do we best utilize the skill set for the given employee?
I know, and I'm so glad you share that sentiment. So from having a corporate background, we want to not have any resource that's unutilized or underutilized. So in the capacity, so this is a multi-pronged issue. So there is a top of licensed nursing practice where all of what a registered nurse or nursing leader learns in their education, and to the full extent of their licensure. So they're underutilized, not labor-wise, but they're underutilized in their licensure and their capabilities. For an example, there's a lot more that the registered nurses and nursing leaders can do in the crisis stabilization unit that other licensure and other professions are doing. And what I'm talking about in on these national forums is that when you have a nurse functioning and working within their full scope of practice and all of which they've learned in nursing school, and to their top, to the nth degree of their scope of practice and licensure, research has supported time and time again that nurses are more satisfied. Anybody in their profession that has a particular training, when you're working at the highest level of your capacity, you feel like you're contributing more, you feel more meaningful, that you're not just a nurse going to give medication, but you're also participating in crisis intervention, risk factor scales, you're a full partner in the interdisciplinary team. So I'll give the people in the audience an example. So in some crisis systems, they've put nurses into just a medical model to where perhaps nurses would be providing medications, some wound care, and perhaps, some assessments on physical health. But in the behavioral health field, and especially in the freestanding crisis stabilization units, and these are small, sometimes, 10 to 16 bed facilities, and they're not set up and don't have the resources and capacity that hospitals do. So it really is wise to make great use of the nurse. So for an example, a nurse can be trained in de-escalation and crisis intervention, care planning, mental status exams, discharge education, care coordination, all of that. And in most of the crisis stabilization units as they are today, and again, they're emerging, they're new. This is a new level of care for the entire country. So they'll catch on, but they've put nurses into just a medical bucket, and nurses are holistic providers. We treat the body, mind, and spirit. And there's so much more we could do, and it benefits on a financial level because you're getting more bang for your buck with your nurse, and research supports that you have a happier nurse, and happier nurses stay, and retention and turnover. Retention is an issue, and turnover is very expensive. So when you're having the nurse do more, you're saving perhaps money. And when you don't have high turnover, you're also saving money. And then the end result is my, assumption, and my theory is, ultimately you're going to have improved outcomes. And I'm looking for, I have a few people that I've mentioned this to that I would like to complete some research on this, to have this model of this full functioning, high level, top of licensed nursing and a crisis stabilization, and the effects on patient outcomes and patients that return into the crisis system or have good outcomes at the end. And I put my money on that there's improved care when we have this expanded role that's completely within our scope and licensure within inside of these, I'll call them freestanding psychiatric emergency departments, but they're called crisis stabilization units.
Like, so interesting. I mean, I think in having like so much close contact with hospital, explaining with my grandfather and everything. I mean, there's all these little turns and insurance. There's so much information out there that's not generally ready or available for the general public, right? The average person is not going to know that this particular unit exists, right? And through even podcasting, it's just like, oh my gosh, I'll get off of here, Heidi, and tonight I'm probably going to be reading all about this. It's going to be in my head because that seed is planted. But it just raises so many questions. But also, too, like in the general nursing field, how many people know that this career option is even, out there for them? I know you just recently talked about in the last segment how they can kind of go and, get classes here, classes there. Like, what if someone sees this and says, okay, I think I want to go into crisis stabilization? What does that career path or education path look like for someone? I know it's general nursing school, but are they gonna have additional classes, or what does the model look like for someone who sees this for the first time and they say sounds like something that's very interesting? How do I get into that field and thrive?
That's a great question. Since it's an emerging level of care, emerging practice, there are very few that are familiar with this setting. So what I see is that nurses that work in the emergency department, which there's a high amount of psychiatric population in emergency departments, nurses that have worked in inpatient psychiatry, that have worked in correctional nursing, perhaps public health, they see these postings, and typically these centers are ran by community mental health. So they're in some cases, they're a publicly funded entity, and it varies throughout the different states. So really, it's a great opportunity to make a huge impact in behavioral health and service your community. And that is also what I speak about to recruitment specialists, because we know that staffing for nurses and for social workers it's really, we're at a crisis, and we don't have any of these recruitment strategies. And what I have said is that a great way to recruit nurses into a crisis stabilization unit is to share that this is an emerging practice. It's a distinct and new level of care. And I know from being in the field for 20 years that when there's something new, when there's a new hospital or a new care setting, nurses are interested and they want to flock to that. So we need to angle it that this is a new and distinct level of care. And there's not on the education and training, there's not a distinct training, although we're working with a couple agencies on how to create a certification and perhaps some formal education on this level. But it doesn't exist right now. So it's that new that the certification and the education track for this subspecialty of nursing simply doesn't exist. It's that new. It's on the ground floor. And so really you're recruiting and nurses that, one, want to make an impact in their community, and two, are, comfortable or interested in working with the behavioral health population and substance use population. But it's a really, really cool field, and you get to help a lot of people, and the work is so needed, so valuable. Like I said, when I started into the crisis system after leaving the acute care, I thought, this is such a huge need. I'm honored. This is where I'm going to stay. This is where I'm going to make my impact. There's not a lot of nurses in this field. And I know I can make a major, dent or impact in this profession. And when you're helping people at their most critical time, at their most vulnerable time in a behavioral health or substance use crisis, or both, and people, will come in suicidal, and they just are hopeless, want to give up, and perhaps they've taken some substances and their cognition is impaired, and you see them over the course of a couple of days find hope again, and you get to be the nurse that was in charge of that. I would say there's no better line of nursing at all.
When I listen, Heidi, when they look back in a couple years and this curriculum is formalized, I'm going to say I had Heidi Warrington on my show, so I already knew. I already knew that the curriculum was coming, because I was just kind of thinking about it and how, and infusing, like you talked about, the utilization, and having people not only have that kind of hard skill set, but also to infuse a lot of soft skill set. And that's what I really, really like about it. And I think also, too, just nursing in general, we just have a nurse here at the hospital, and she's a very, very sweet girl, very sweet. I mean, the tact was very good. She did everything good, but she was just so cold. She's younger, and I think sometimes having a lot of these different sights into nursing just makes a better, well-rounded nurse, whether it's in crisis stabilization or just out there on the floor. And I really like that blend of psychology and the actual skills that come together for this field. So I'm intrigued. Trust me, I'll be looking around tonight, because once something grazes my antenna, I tend to tune in. But it is such a beautiful thing, and it is so needed. I was just speaking to someone just about, just the statuses of just mental health general, where we are. Everything is just so heavy, the politics, the world, the killings, everything. But it's a great feel for me when I speak to people that's on the front line and making a difference, right? Because we can all just be one little trauma incident away from having a real situation to where we might need some stabilization. So I just love this interview. I'm probably going to go back and watch it today. Typically, I don't get to watch them until weeks later, but I probably will watch this one tonight, because I know there's some stuff that I missed. But I want to really talk about Heidi, because you said, you had to transition from being like this corporate woman nurse, and then you went into entrepreneurship. Talk about the shift. Like, was there like a big, did you have to do a big mindset shift? But it kind of sounds like you knew that was coming, like you had to arrive, like I've arrived. The time is now. Like for me, I wasn't as fortunate with my journey into entrepreneurship. It kind of had the end on the toxic end, and I was kind of like back up against the wall, make a decision. What can you do? But it was so necessary, right? Because I had been asking for something else and asking for something so meaningful, but we never know how that's going to come. And I'm just so grateful that it did. But for you and your shift, what was that kind of moment? And kind of talk about the mindset to leave this and just build this whole consulting firm, which I think is absolutely fabulous.
Yeah. So I've always wanted to be an entrepreneur and own my own business. I started off when I was, very young, selling flowers around the neighborhood, making popcorn, selling it to the neighbors, babysitting the neighbors' children, and, working for myself at a very young age. And I'm one of 7 children. So I had to, my parents classic line was, "Oh, you want it? Save your money." There wasn't a lot of extra money going around. So I found ways to start working at a very early age. Again, at the age of 11, I started babysitting, and, and even before that, I was, my mom, is a joke in my family that, I sold dead flowers to people and they bought them from me, and they were old flowers. But so, however, years go past. I'm a young mother. I needed a stable job employed, and it just never was the time to take that launch and go into that risky environment of starting your own business when you're managing a household and you're a single mom. So a couple years ago, when my children became adults, this was the time that I was able to take a bigger risk now that they were through school, or through high school, and one was graduated from college, that I could take on this endeavor. And then by that time I had rose to become chief nursing officer. And then I, had my mind wheel, my wheels going, and I identified that I was one of the very few nurses in this profession, and basically the stars aligned. And I was like, this is the time. It's the time I can take a risk. My children are grown, and I've identified a niche, and I just ran with it. So really it was the timing. And then I also had taken, 18 years to build up experience. So I had this level of credibility and knowledge to share with others. And lo and behold, I get a contract with the Department of Health and Human Services, and I provide it, subject matter expertise on this particular topic. And I'm very grateful and honored for one of my largest contracts in the consulting firm with that. And then I also help smaller crisis systems. But really, the shift was, I knew I always wanted to work for myself. The time wasn't right when my children were younger, because it is risky and you do got to take on a lot, and it takes a lot of extra time. So I built my experience, raised my kids, and then launched.
Oh man, I absolutely love it, and I'm happy for those early signs of success that you received right out the gate. That's absolutely beautiful. I mean, and it lets you know. I mean, there should have been a clear indicator that this work is needed, because right out the gate, you're able to get that done. And so many women, when that doesn't happen, like off the rip, they kind of question words and question all these things. But Heidi's here telling you, I had children, I had life going on, I still made this thing happen. So the whole purpose of this podcast is to bring all walks of life, all professions, to let you know you can do it. You put your name in the hat, and you wait for the results. And I'm really happy that you shared that with us, your journey from all walks of your career to entrepreneurship, because that's one of the things I love to highlight here on the show. Now, I want you to tell us about the website where we can contact you in case people have questions about this or want to know more about the field. Where can we find Heidi? Where's the best place to connect?
Well, 2 major locations, one LinkedIn, and it's Heidi Warrington, just as it's spelled, in LinkedIn. And then I have a website, which is www.warringtonsolutionsinc.org. So www.warringtonsolutionsinc.org. And then I'm on most social media platforms. LinkedIn for professional. I have Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. All of them's under my name, just first and last, Heidi Warrington. TikTok, I have available on most major social media platforms as well. And anyone can direct message me, go to my website, fill out an inquiry form, or connect with me on LinkedIn.
Oh, I love it. And Heidi, let me ask you this. I don't get to ask it every interview, but when I can squeeze it in, I always do. And I asked Heidi to imagine her 80th birthday, and said, I don't know who's there. I don't know if you guys are dressed up. Is it fancy? Are you on the lake? I don't know. All I want to know is, what are you hoping that they're saying about Heidi, not only as it relates to crisis stabilization, but really, what are they saying about Heidi as a woman?
Oh, well, when you said that, I just got goosebumps. I've never been asked that before. That's a great question. So what I would like to be said is, my mission is to make a global impact on healthcare. And so at my 80th birthday, what I would like to be said about my achievements is that I made a major impact in a global health issue over the course of my life and recognized with the World Health Organization, International Council of Nursing, perhaps NIH, CDC, depending on which we know the political climate, what's funded, what's not anymore. But on a global capacity, I want to make a major move in healthcare and be known for that, like on a Nobel Peace Prize type of level. And I think I can do it.
Now, you have my contact information now, so when their grand celebration occurs, you just know to send the contact details so I can show up and say, she told me that, and it came to pass. I can't believe it's been 30 minutes. I mean, these 30 minutes go so quickly, and you guys should be able to tell this is my passion. It's what I love to do, and I really think, look, I'm a little biased. This is one of the best podcasts on the planet, and when this thing really blows, you're going to have proof that I told you so. But this has been another amazing episode of the Her Voice Shines podcast. I told you miraculous things happen when you let your voice shine. And I'll be back in really no time with another amazing woman. But until then, I love you and there's nothing you can do about it.
Thank you so much, Sandra.